All right, so you ready to dive in? Today, we're hitching our horses and heading straight into Red Dead Redemption 2.
Let's do it.
We're talking 1899, the tail end of the Wild West, and a gang of outlaws on the run. And here's the thing.
Okay.
This isn't just another story about shootouts and train robberies, though there's plenty of that, trust me. It's about loyalty, morality, the really messy realities of, well, living outside the law. So are you ready to unpack the legend, or maybe the infamy, of the Vanderlyn gang?
I am so ready. And their story, it's more than just some dusty old Western cliche, It gets at something really human, that push and pull we all feel between who we are and who we think we should be.
Exactly. It's like looking in a mirror sometimes, isn't it? And it all starts with Dutch Vanderlyn, this charismatic leader who holds this whole gang together. He's got that whole, like, Robin Hood thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about freedom for the working class, escaping the clutches of, well, corporations, the government, the whole system, really. And I don't know about you, but digging deeper, it makes you wonder, was this like a common thing back in the late 1800s? Was Dutch just a product of his time, or was there something more, let's say, flexible about his morals?
It's interesting, right? Because you've got Dutch's whole spiel, this whole free America idea, rejecting the system. And it totally resonated with people.
Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution was exploding. Massive upheaval, social and economic. Imagine the resentment, the fear people felt, being left behind by these huge forces they couldn't control. And Dutch, he tapped right into that anger, offered this seductive alternative. Forget their rules, live by your own code, and stick it to the man.
So he was like this Wild West revolutionary. I can see the appeal for sure, especially for someone like Arthur Morgan.
Oh, absolutely.
Such his right-hand man. Fiercely loyal, like a son to him, almost. But even early on, you sense this struggle in him.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's trying to convince himself they're the good guys, even when their actions say something different.
Yeah, Arthur, he's the heart of this story, really. Wrestling with these big questions, right and wrong, loyalty versus his conscience. One minute, he's this hardened outlaw,
Right.
capable of incredible things, violence for sure. But then you see him connect with, like, a struggling family or just his own regret after a job goes wrong. It's that duality, that inner conflict makes him such a compelling character.
I think that's what draws us in, right? That struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't been in a situation where they question their loyalty? To a person, a cause, your job even. It's that classic dilemma. When does loyalty go too far? When does it become, I don't know, complicity? And that question, it just explodes during the Blackwater Massacre.
Oh, man.
Which, let's be real, is a huge turning point for the gang. And not in a good way.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
Yeah.
They set out to pull off this daring heist, and it just blows up in their faces. And suddenly, they're not Robin Hood anymore. They're murderers on the run.
And it changes everything.
Completely.
There's this moment right after the chaos. Arthur turns to Dutch and says, "We've made a mistake, Dutch. This is too much." You can practically hear the doubt creeping in. It's like he's realizing they're trapped on this path with no turning back.
That scene, man, it just nails that shift in their dynamic. Up to that point, Arthur's loyalty was rock solid.
Unbreakable. Yeah.
Exactly. But Blackwater, it plants these seeds of doubt. Arthur starts to see Dutch not as this, I don't know, savior figure, but as this flawed, maybe even dangerous guy.
Flawed is an understatement.
You said it.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is this whole downfall thing, this descent from a noble cause into something much darker. Not uncommon for outlaw gangs back then, not at all. It's almost like poetic irony, isn't it? After Blackwater, the gang hides out in the Wapiti Valley.
Beautiful country up there.
The scenery, it's breathtaking. Mountains, forests, you name it. You'd think it'd be a chance to catch their breath, Find some peace, maybe.
Right.
But the truth is, their problems, they just fester in that supposed paradise. All those cracks in their foundation, they just get deeper.
It's like the beauty around them just makes the ugliness inside stand out even more,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got this untouched wilderness, and they're busy tearing each other apart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as if their own issues weren't enough, they've got the O'Driscolls breathing down their necks.
Talk about bad blood.
Those O'Driscolls, they're everything Dutch pretends to be against. Ruthless, greedy, always looking for an angle. But here's the thing that gets me. How different were they, really? Both gangs, living by the gun, both outside the law, both after the same turf. It makes you think.
Well, yeah, it's easy to see the O'Driscolls as the bad guys, especially from Arthur's point of view. He's already questioning everything, and then these guys show up, spoiling for a fight, forcing them into more violence, really. There's that scene where Arthur actually begs Dutch. He says, "We don't have to fight them. There's got to be another way." It really gets to you. I mean, was there another way in the Wild West? Or was violence just, I don't know, the only option?
It's a question historians still wrestle with, honestly. On the one hand, you've got this whole romantic vision of the West, right? Disputes settled with a duel at high noon,
Yeah.
honor and all that.
The movies. Yeah.
Exactly. But the reality, it was way more complicated. These were lawless lands, for the most part, not much in the way of lawmen, and the whole culture was soaked in violence.
Yeah.
You factor in the fight to survive, the competition for resources, the constant threat of getting robbed, cheated, killed. It's not hard to see how a hair-trigger temper and a loaded gun became the norm, you know?
So Arthur wanting a different path, it makes sense. But in that time and place, maybe not so realistic.
Right, it's tragic in a way. He's
Yeah.
stuck between this core sense of what's right
Yeah.
and this harsh reality he can't escape. It's what makes his story so powerful.
That's what gets me, yeah. It makes you think about choices, you know? Even if there was another way, could someone like Arthur really change, break free from the life he's always known?
Exactly. And that's what I think Red Dead does so well. It doesn't
Mhm.
shy away from that complexity. It doesn't give you easy answers or try to make Arthur into some perfect hero or even a straight-up villain. He's in this gray area, morally speaking.
Like most of us, probably.
Exactly. We might not be facing down rival gangs, but we all deal with those moments where our values clash with the choices we have to make, right? The compromises we got to live with.
So we've talked about the rising tensions, the compromises, this feeling that they're heading for a crash and they can't stop it.
Right.
And that brings us to the big showdown with the O'Driscolls. I won't spoil it.
Right.
But let's just say it shows how Red Dead Redemption 2, how it gives you this epic story, but it still feels real, you know? Brutal.
Well, absolutely. It's a turning point for the story for sure.
Yeah.
But for Arthur, too, he spent so long trying to make his loyalty to Dutch fit with with his own sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And all that chaos, the violence of it all, something in him just breaks.
There's that line afterwards, it always gets me. He says, "This is madness. We're just killing each other." And it's not like some big epiphany, you know? It's more like this quiet realization, like the truth just hit him. They're so caught up in this revenge, this violence, they've lost sight of, well, everything.
Like they've lost their way, yeah.
Exactly.
It shows you how empty, blind loyalty can be.
Yeah.
Arthur really believed in what they were doing,
Yeah.
Their way of life, it meant something.
Right.
But that fight, it strips everything away. It leaves him with just the ugliness of it all.
And that's where Red Dead Redemption 2, it becomes more than just a game, doesn't it? It makes you ask yourself, can someone like Arthur, someone who's done bad things, can they ever really change? Can you ever outrun your past, really?
Those are questions that, well, they've been around forever, haven't they? From, I don't know, myths and legends to books and movies. We're drawn to these stories of redemption, second chances.
Right.
And with Arthur, it hits even harder because we've seen his struggle up close. Those flashes of, I don't know, decency, even kindness in the middle of all that darkness.
It makes you think about the real outlaws, you know? The ones whose stories didn't get turned into, like, romanticized versions. Did any of them ever just walk away, find peace after a life like that? Or were they, like Arthur worries about, stuck with the things they'd done?
It's a tough one, and maybe there isn't a simple answer. Maybe that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption 2, it doesn't give you easy answers about morality, good and evil, any of that. It makes you think about, I don't know, what makes us human, I guess. The hope we all carry, the chance that maybe, even when things seem hopeless, redemption is still out there somewhere.
Well, on that note, I think we've done our deep dive on Red Dead Redemption 2, at least for today.
It's been a ride, that's for sure.
It has. And as we sign off, I think the big takeaways are, well, what does loyalty really mean? Can we escape our pasts? And is redemption, is it even possible for those who have, let's say, strayed from the path? These are questions we all face in the game and maybe in our own lives too. So until next time, thanks for settling up and joining us on this deep dive.